What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. Some serious matters have happened over yesterday while everybody was out celebrating Halloween with their kids or just watching kids take in Halloween. I hope you all had a wonderful Halloween holiday. The Liberals have completely sunk this country. And speaking of our children, they've officially put them all at risk. They've shown that this country isn't serious, basically. I am completely appalled by this Supreme Court decision. What Sean Fraser has done here is completely unforgivable. This is where I say this country needs an enema. Anybody who wants to tell you now they favor the Liberals, they favor Mark Carney, they obviously stand on the side of not just corruption, not just scandals, not just overtaxation or wacko green energy policies, but they now stand on allowing certain materials to go unchecked, unnoticed. What am I talking about? Well, I'm going to start with Danielle Smith tweeting out yesterday in regards to the federal court's, or the Supreme Court's, decision of the federal government from the Liberals. This decision is outrageous. The possession of we'll just say child materials because we can't use the P word on YouTube. The possession of child materials is a heinous crime. And even a 1-year minimum sentence is already far too lenient. We call on the federal government to immediately invoke the Constitution's notwithstanding clause to overturn this ruling and ensure the protection of our children. Now, Danielle Smith came under a lot of heat from Naheed Nenshit, as well as all the NDP wackos for banning books in schools as little as grades 1 to 4 that were allowing child material style books in their classrooms where 2 boys were giving an oral presentation, we'll say. A lot of people said, oh, you can't start banning books. It's terrible. You can't. Danielle's like Hitler. I don't understand who's in charge in this country when they think that this stuff's okay. But of course, people were requesting a 1-year minimal sentence if you're caught with these materials. Mandatory. You've got Jason Levine tweeting out, let this sink in. By the way, Jason's a great channel. Go watch Jason Levine's show. I was on his show earlier this week with Jeff Rath. Absolutely amazing interview we had. Go give Jason a follow. He says, let this sink in. Danielle Smith used the charter to put children in school to be educated. The Supreme Court of Canada used the charter to put children in harm's way to be exploited. There's no way to fix Canada. Alberta already stands alone. Let's make that official. I couldn't agree with him more. Danielle seems to be the only premier in this country with any common sense, with any form of what is required of running a mandate. And this is the hypocrisy that goes on in this country. You'll see here, like as I go over X, the left have been losing their minds all week over this teachers must go back to work while they negotiate a deal. Education is the most important thing for students. You can't use kids as weapons in order to negotiate a better deal. And you have guys like Naheed Nenshit coming out saying, well, let's be clear. I think education is important and all kids must be in school. No, you don't. You're using children. In fact, your teachers are punishing students if they don't get up and go protest at the Alberta legislature to talk about how unfair it is for teachers. You're basically holding the province hostage with our children, saying you either give us what we want or your kids go without. And everybody's up in arms about it. You'll see these posts that say, let's be clear about what happened earlier this week in Alberta. Danielle Smith's government introduced Bill 2, the Back to School Act, invoking the charter's notwithstanding clause to force 51,000 striking teachers to work by Wednesday, effectively stripping their charter rights. So they worry about charter rights when our kids are going without an education. But if you've got child materials, oh, that's okay. No problem. And you'll see that here. Days after she became first Alberta Premier to invoke notwithstanding clause. Danielle Smith wants it used again by the feds. Of course, this is the post we're talking about. I'm going to get to the article. But you actually have somebody somewhat defending that the notwithstanding clause shouldn't come into effect to protect our kids from these materials, to ensure that these materials aren't being distributed. This guy would get along real well with Naheed Nenshi. They'd probably go to a couple islands on vacation by the looks of it. Here's another one. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's use of the notwithstanding clause to end the teachers' strike could go beyond provincial politics, testing Canada's constitutional balance of power. Get the full legal breakdown. Of course, the day her government crushed collective bargaining rights by using the notwithstanding clause against Alberta teachers, Danielle Smith flees the country for a week of 5-star hotels, fancy dinners on our dime. She's negotiating oil deals. She's doing her job. Does Premier Danielle Smith plan on normalizing use of the notwithstanding clause in Alberta? You guys get the point. Like, it's going over and over and over. Like, this is where I keep saying that what happened this week had nothing to do with teachers. It had nothing to do with the conditions in which they're working under. They're treated like they think they're slaves for some reason in this province. But it's all been done for political gain, political filibuster. We showed on a previous video the day before yesterday, how Tom Lukaszuk essentially was using the Forever Canada campaign to run a new political party so that he could run against Danielle Smith, so that should his petition have gone to a legislative vote, rather than Danielle saying it's a constitutional question, which, by the way, just a friendly reminder, folks, Alberta is getting their referendum vote next year. Little bit of happiness. He was going to take the information of those who signed the petition so that should it have gone to a legislative vote, anybody who didn't agree with it, including Danielle Smith, would suddenly be targeted, and he would say, oh, look, they don't want Alberta to stay in Canada. I'm going to run for premier. If you want Alberta to remain in Canada, if you don't want MAGA-style politics in this we kick them all out. He would use Donald Trump. We've seen how the Liberals have used Donald Trump to paint Orange Man bad. Your TDS is more important than our policies. It's more important than the scandals. It's more important than the fact Mark Carney can't get a trade deal or doesn't care about putting through a trade deal. He doesn't even want to open up the economic power of our country. He has no intention on doing anything that benefits this country, and he's made that crystal clear. Well, here's the article from the Supreme Court that now says mandatory minimum sentences for possession of child materials is unconstitutional. We wouldn't want to put people in jail who are carrying these materials, would we? Oh, that would be a crying shame. And the majority of these materials that are being found these days, by the way, are being found by creepy, we'll say, migrants that are coming here from countries like India, where this kind of stuff is normalized. And they're trying to normalize it here, from what I can only understand and guess, is in order to pull votes. I don't understand how you could ever question how is this allowed or acceptable. Canada's top court has struck down the 1-year mandatory minimum sentence for possession and access to child materials. The Supreme Court of Canada delivered its decision on Friday. The case, which was heard by 9-judge panel, involved a challenge to the sentencing rules brought forward by 2 men in Quebec who pleaded guilty to the offenses. They challenged the mandatory minimum sentences in the lower courts on the basis that they violated the charter-protected right that guards against cruel and unusual punishment. It's cruel and unusual to send somebody for jail, for viewing or distributing child materials. Are we serious? Like, this is where I say our country has become a joke. We can't do this anymore. We can't. The Crown then appealed to the Supreme Court. The top court dismissed the appeal and declared the mandatory minimum sentences for the 2 child offenses as unconstitutional, in a 5-4 decision. This is the problem when you have liberal judges lined up everywhere. The finding comes as the government Liberals vow to crack down further on sentencing and bail conditions for serious, violent, and SA offenses. Last week, Justice Minister Sean Fraser, who knows nothing about what he's doing, announced a new bill that could make it more difficult for some accused to get bail and toughen sentencing laws for serious and violent crimes. You don't call this serious? This is where I say the Liberals paint it all up that, hey, okay, we're doing something. We're going to introduce something. I keep telling people that even when they're being investigated for Mark Carney's conflicts of interests, the proof in the pudding on his conflicts of interest are all over Moose on the Loose's channel. David has done tireless work and brought up one hell of a chart that detailingly follows every single conflict of interest for Mark Carney. No arrests have been made. Nothing has been done. We don't need to spend millions of dollars going through committees where everybody sits and orders out lunch every day and talks about how crazy and hypocritical Mark Carney's government is while nothing happens. This is the same thing. The Liberals come out and they say, oh, hey, everybody, we're going to introduce tougher laws because Pierre's been hammering on us. We don't want to go to the polls. But they don't actually do anything. We're on this constant hamster wheel. And this is why anybody who wants to point the finger at myself, at any Albertan, or even somebody in Saskatchewan who says, oh, they're dirty, they just want to leave the country, they're horrible people, they're traitors. What else are we supposed to do when this country refuses to work like an actual democracy, like an actual first world country, which is on its way to being a third world shithole? The new bill did not contain any changes to mandatory minimum sentences. Fraser has promised further legislation in the coming months that would specifically tackle SA abuse and other horrific crimes targeting children. Obviously not. Since 2015, the Supreme Court has struck down a series of mandatory minimum sentencing laws, declaring them incompatible with the Charter rights protection against cruel and unusual punishment. So again, you have all these wacko lefties on social media saying, well, Danielle violated Charter rights by sending protesting teachers back to school after they turned down a 17% raise. I will remind anybody who hasn't watched those videos that Danielle offered the minimum starting wage for teachers. They were going to be the highest paid teachers in Western Canada. Even on tax bracket, the minimum starting wage was going to be $70,000 a year. The highest rung of the ladder, $119,000 a year. That comes with 90 sick days a year. 3 months off every year. You don't have to fight for summer holidays. You don't have to fight for time off on long weekends. You don't have to try and plan your vacations around other coworkers. You get Christmas off. You get Easter, you get Halloween, you get, like, you know what I mean? I guess technically you don't get Halloween, but you get the gist. And they talk like, oh, we're so abused. She was going to put 4,500 combined staff between new teachers and teaching assistants and build 130 new schools to handle the overinflated classes. Not enough. We want double. They wanted 32%. And they told the province, in order to pay for that, to introduce a provincial sales tax. That's who wants to win the next election. But if you have these materials, oh, it's violating the Charter rights if you send them to prison. But Danielle's bad for sending teachers back to work. Give me a friggin' break. It says the most recent cases came in a duo of 2023 decisions that called Hills and Merchand, in which the top court found that mandatory minimum sentences for discharging a non-restrictive firearm, into a house and child luring were unconstitutional because they were hypothetical scenarios in which the 4-year and 1-year respectively minimum terms were excessive. So if you fire a non-restricted weapon into a home or lure a child, minimum sentences are excessive. They violate your Charter of Rights. This country needs an enema. The court concluded in both cases that the objectives of denunciation and deterrence cannot justify a mandatory minimum sentence that applies to an offense that captures a wide spectrum of conduct with different levels of moral capability that would have had deleterious effect on young offenders who have high prospects for rehabilitation. I don't know what to say. This guy, if he's one of the ones who sided with this, Trump says, get him out of here. Get him out. I am completely embarrassed and disgusted with the representatives of this country. Donald Trump, again, said it best. I love Canada. I love Canadians. But I don't like their leadership. I don't like the people who run the country. It sums it up in a nutshell. God bless President Trump for that one. But nonetheless, folks, Mark Carney and Justin Trudeau took your Canadian flag and sold this country out a long time ago. And when they were done doing that, they took your maple leaf and they wiped their ass with it, threw it on the ground, and stomped all over it. The Canada you knew and remembered is gone. The days of being friendly, being nice, saying sorry, the days of being able to go to your job, come home with a little bit of money, having one person in the house working while the other looks after the children or, starts up a little side hustle, those days are over. They're never coming back. Now are the days where you must secure your homes, bar up your doors, mandate that you want the rights to protect your family, leave your keys on the front steps so people can steal your vehicles. Have migrants running around your city, pooping in the streets, living in tents, distributing this kind of material. Have people complain and try to recall your leaders for doing the right things, like sending teachers back to school after being out for a month, getting a reasonable raise request, and telling them you're essential, you need to go back and do your job. And people say, nah, get them out of here. That's terrible. That's the country we live in, folks. The only path forward that I see at this point, the only way of getting any form of normalization is independence. I really don't see how you get ahead any further. And that's why I've said, it's not me waving the finger saying, ha ha, Alberta's getting independence. I'm telling people long in advance, before next year's vote, if you have the ability and you're sick and tired of what's happening in the country, you should pack up your bags and get out to Alberta before they build a big, beautiful wall around it. Because we're getting our independence, folks. It's the only way we can get away from this. You'll want to be a part of that if you're sick and tired of this country. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. If it's your first time here, I hope this video's earned your subscription. Make sure you hit that button, folks. We're on the way to 150,000 subscribers. I'd like to hit that by the end of November. Join me live now, twice a week on the channel. Wednesdays for Unhinged Fringe with my new co-host Matt. Fridays for Friday Night Fringe with the beautiful Mrs. Fringe as we sit down. God, my Lisdexia is kicking in today. We sit down and talk about everything that happened in politics, everything we know coming up in the week ahead, as well as Q&A within the greatest YouTube community on the platform. I look forward to chatting with you guys each and every week outside of these live streams, hearing what you have to say. I most importantly look forward to chatting with you guys this week, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.